find Gosling's face, and before I start, I'm just going to find a middle line here. And if I look at the bottom of his face and the top of his head, not the top of his face, but the top of his skull, I can see that his eyes are roughly in the middle. Now this is really important to remember because most people think this is the top of the head and they think the eyes are closer to the top and not in the middle. If we look at his nose is about halfway between the eyes and the bottom of the chin. So here I'm going to mark where I want his face to be. Okay, so when I get to this stage, I can see that half of his face is in shadow. So I'm going to mark and draw the shape of the shadow. Using the pencil on the edge and holding it like this, not like this, allows you to shade really quickly. Now there's one light source. It's shining on this side of the face, so this side is in shadow. And I'm just sort of blocking in what I see when I squint. And see, I'm just looking for really simple shapes right now and not focusing on any details. Now hair is tricky to draw, so just kind of get the basic shape right first. And we'll come back to it at the end. So ears typically line up at the eyebrow and the bottom of the nose. So you can kind of see that his ears are slightly above the bottom of the nose. Now his eyes are closer together than the typical eye. So eyes are usually the same distance apart as they are wide. So now if I squint, I can see that this part of the face in general is brighter than this part of his face. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of shadow. Now I can see that his cheek is a little bit wider, so I take my kneaded eraser, and if I'm not pressing too hard, it's very, very easy to erase. If you press really, really hard, you'll create marks on your paper and it'll make it impossible to erase. So now I'm going to start adding my darks. And you want to draw eyebrows in the direction of hair growth. So this way, and not like this, but like this. And most people think that the whites of your eyes are really white, almost paper white, but that's really not true. And if you leave it paper white, it starts looking really scary because The whitest part is actually the reflection and just right near the bottom. You also want to draw eyes at the same time, the left one and the right one at the same time, because if you don't, you'll draw one higher and one lower, and you'll draw two perfectly nice eyes, but in the wrong place. And all the while, I'm kind of checking my likeness and trying to draw everything evenly at the same time versus finishing one section really quickly. It's very easy to leave a little highlight. And remember, the highlight's not going to be right at the top, it's going to be slightly lower. And the darkest part of the eye is the middle and the outside of the iris. Now, his nose is very, very straight, and it seems to be almost lower and longer than what I have it right now. So to get a better likeness, I'm just going to lower his nose. Like that. And usually speaking, there's a ball at the bottom of your nose. And there's bone right over here, so this shadow is going to be a lot darker. And when you're drawing eye corners, if you leave a little bit of white, it'll feel like it's glistening. When you draw the eye, you gotta make sure you remember the eyeball, and the corner actually shows the eyeball going into the eye socket like this. And then this crease is right at the top. Now in a relaxed eye, there's definitely more space here and more coverage there. So that's really handy to remember. And if you remember that the eyeball is round, you'll remember to shade the eye a little bit in the corners. You never want to draw a mouth like this. You want to draw a mouth the top lip is usually more defined, and the bottom lip is more round. So if it's round, these corners actually don't exist. Okay, so going back to his mouth, I can see that the corner of his mouth sort of aligns with his eye. So I'm going to find that alignment. And on this side, see on this side his mouth is sort of aligned with this part of his eye. And when you draw beards, you really don't need to draw individual hairs. You kind of just want to draw the value. and then just indicate some of the hairs. Now, when I'm shading, I'm kind of shading in the direction of his hair growth just to give it a bit more texture. Here, his hair sort of blends in with the shadow on the side of his face. So we're just going to keep it like that. Now you can get different lines with your point. So for example, you can get lines like this, or you could get lines that have a sharp edge on one side and a more blended edge on this side. So you can see with the hair, I'm kind of using a combination of both to get the maximum amount of texture. Now if you could see my eyes, you could see me glancing back and forth constantly, checking my values, checking my shapes. Now, a lot of people say, how do I draw noses? Noses are so hard to draw. And the easiest thing to remember about noses are that noses are like a wedge, right? So it's kind of, if you're looking at it as a shape, it looks like this. So the bottom of the nose will be dark, and the side of the nose will be dark. Now, if, you know, most people have a sort of a ball at the end of the nose. So if I add a ball here at the end, and say the nostrils are here, basically, if you break it down into forms, it's a lot easier to draw. So you can see that this line is right here, and it's very, very subtle. So I'm just going to give it very minimal shading. I'd say that's it.